Alright gamers, I've got a story. December 25th, 2014. I walked out of my room to find one of my favorite consoles, and one of the worst consoles I have ever owned, sitting under the tree. The Wii U. Flash forward a few months and I had a $20 Nintendo eShop gift card just burning a hole in my pocket. At this point, there were only two games that had really clicked with me. Wind Waker and, to a lesser extent, Super Mario 3D World. And so I bought two games on the Wii U Virtual Console. Ocarina of Time and Super Mario 64. I took a liking to Ocarina of Time almost immediately, but my start with Mario 64 was a little rockier. I found the controls clunky and unintuitive, and compared to the large-scale and developed world of Ocarina of Time, at a glance, Mario 64's opening minutes gave me the impression that it didn't have very much to offer. I stopped playing in the middle of Bomb-On Battlefield. But a few months later, something was bothering me. Something was making my mind go back to Mario 64 again and again. I paid $9.99 to download it, and I really wanted to get my money's worth, so I decided to give it another shot. And this time, it stuck. The controls finally clicked, and the more I played, the more I realized that simplicity is only a weakness when it doesn't have rock-solid moment-to-moment gameplay to back it up. I finally got it. Today, Mario 64 is one of my favorite games. In fact, the very first video on this channel was of Mario 64. Let's take a look.
Alright. Hey guys.
On second thought, let's not, but the point is, I liked Mario 64 enough to create an entire YouTube channel. At first, just so I could post this video. That's how much I like this game. So imagine my joy when I learned there was an entire collection of sequels to Mario 64. Games built using the same engine, but with a ton of fresh ideas, or stars, or levels, all made by other Mario 64 fans. Downloadable for free. SM64 hacks are incredible. But first we have to give credit where it's due. SM64 hacks are only as good as they are because of the foundation set by the original game. As I said earlier, at a glance, Mario 64 is a fairly simple game. Most of its levels are noticeably less complex than those in many other Mario games. They lack the unique platforming challenges of the 2D games and the unique level mechanics of the following 3D games. Levels in Mario 64 are frankly boring at a glance. Where a new player sees a mundane, concrete path, an experienced player sees dozens of different routes, all of which offer a unique challenge and are uniquely entertaining. The levels in Mario 64 are simple, but Mario is complicated. He has a dozen distinct moves, some of which are actually useful. Many of his moves lead into one another, and he can easily pick up and maintain speed using slopes or walls, making his movement fast, fluid, and adaptable. Once you get the hang of the controls, it's easy to be entertained by even boring, rudimentary level design, because Mario's movement is so fun on its own. Super Mario 64 hacks often differ greatly in level design, platforming challenges, level mechanics, and most other things, but most hacks decide to leave Mario's movement unchanged. They inherit the original game's fast and fluid movement, while pouring their new ideas mainly into the places the player will explore. Mario 64 so SM64 hacks could Yahoo! And wahoo they have, ever since the release of what is often cited as the first major SM64 hack. Super Mario 64, The Missing Stars, released by Frauber on April 19th, 2009. It shows some signs of age. Level geometry is very simple. Objects are placed only out of necessity, making areas look bland and sort of ugly. And since each object is very intentionally placed for a specific platforming challenge, there's not a lot of room for the alternative routes that gave the original game so much replay value. If it wasn't the very first substantial SM64 hack posted online, there would be little reason to ever bother playing it. But it was, and there's a lot of important history on display here. Because despite the bland level design and platforming challenges, there are some really cool and ambitious ideas. Rather than being a collection of distinct levels, The Missing Stars is mostly a continuous, interconnected world. And yes, Hut, that is what I meant by this statement. Beyond that, something that really stuck out to me was the day-night cycle, which, while rudimentary, affects the content of certain areas and unlocks certain stars. When I shared this fact with my friends, most were initially unimpressed. But I was floored by the fact that in the very first major SM64 hack ever posted, a hack with so many clear flaws in level design and the very playability of its levels, the creator thought, you know, a day and night cycle would be pretty cool, and decided to make one for seemingly no other reason. And you know what? It was cool enough that I'm talking about it in a video 12 years later. To me, this perfectly demonstrates one of the most interesting parts of ROM hacking. Pushing an engine to its limits and trying new things just to see if you can. That spirit of taking the rules of the original game and breaking them is abundantly present in this hack, and despite the numerous design flaws bringing down the experience, it was clear that the missing stars was a sign of great things to come. If SM64 hacks continued to push the engine to places it had never gone before, and refined their levels and mechanics, then it was clear even from the beginning that they had the potential to be something incredible. And therein lies the greatest strength of SM64 hacks, the ability to build off of previous releases. SM64 hacks are essentially an entire genre of video game, with creators seeing what worked and what didn't in other releases, and using what they learned to push the genre to new places. Through this process of changing the definition of what an SM64 ROM hack can be, in the past decade, hacks have become something more interesting and entertaining than even the original game. For example, after the missing stars, hack creators figured out that this sort of bare-bones level design isn't really that fun. So they started to build larger, more open levels that allowed for more player choice, often surpassing even the original game's levels in terms of size and complexity. And then, a little later down the line, people started to think, hey, maybe we could use some custom objects, and soon, note blocks, on-off switches, and springs all became commonplace. And as this process has repeated over years and years of development, SM64 hacks have become something entirely unlike the original game. There are story games, puzzle games, open-world adventures, hell, somebody made Minesweeper. That spirit of pushing the engine to its limits that could be found all the way back in the first major hack ever led to the creation of so many wildly different gameplay styles, all experienced through the medium of Super Mario 64. This is the kind of progress, creativity, and sheer insanity that only an entire community of incredibly dedicated fans, all working off the progress of the others, could create. But I didn't know, and certainly didn't care, about any of this history or progress when I first learned of SM64 hacks. I just wanted some more Mario fun. But what I certainly didn't expect was to grow so dramatically as a player. I mean, I expected to improve, certainly. Not only would I be playing more Mario 64, but hacks are aimed at an audience of players who have already beaten the original game, and thus are typically more challenging than it. And I certainly have grown in that regard, though not as much as you might expect, honestly. However, that's not what I really mean. When I say I've grown as a player, I'm not talking about skill, I'm talking about knowledge. Playing SM64 hacks teaches you loads of mechanics and techniques you otherwise would have never known about, or had any reason to know about. Starting with some simple ones, did you know that you can kick, dive, or ground pound at the end of a dangerous fall to negate fall damage? Or did you know that if you need a little extra height on a ledge grab, you can wall kick away and hold straight toward the ledge? Or did you know that you can climb up steep slopes up to a certain steepness by repeatedly kicking? I'm sure some of you are saying, yeah, I did know all of that, but I certainly didn't before I started playing SM64 hacks. These are pretty much the only techniques that have much use when playing the original game, with the exception of a few tricks hacks taught me that can be used for speedrunning, such as ground pounding when collecting a star, or punching to slide up slopes underwater. But beyond those, there are also a number of tricks that have basically no utility at all, but are just flashy and fun. Using a shell and a slope to get crazy backward speed, this weird box interaction, and whatever the hell you want to call this. I have never used these mechanics to do anything useful, ever, but they're a ton of fun, and they're really neat to show off to people who don't know them. These weird, unintuitive, and situational techniques add a surprising amount of depth, precision, and character to Super Mario 64's engine, and I never would have known any of them without playing hacks. And once you've learned all of these techniques, mastered the art of moving Mario, researched the history of Mario 64 hacks, played all of the most talked about hacks, and studied extensively at Pen & Coke Academy, then you've made it. You're part of the club. Perhaps my favorite part of Super Mario 64 hacks is the Super Mario 64 community. In general, most older games that still have any sort of organized following have some of the most dedicated and intense fans in the gaming world. I mean, have you ever seen a Splatoon fan recreate Chip's challenge entirely in Splatoon? No, because the fanbase simply hasn't had enough time to develop to the point where that would even be feasible. Super Mario 64 fans, on the other hand, have had several decades to study, modify, and optimize their game. And yes, Hut, that is what I meant by this statement. The fans that are still sticking with SM64 after all this time are incredibly knowledgeable and incredibly dedicated, and by watching videos, playing hacks, and talking about them online, you can become a part of that community. Gaming communities are important to me. Playing video games is fun, yeah, but so is talking about them. I mean, I have a YouTube channel that consists almost entirely of me talking about video games. I like trying to put my thoughts on games into writing and putting them out there for other people to react to. Because I think games are at their best when they're shared. Yes, those are words that just came out of my mouth, and that's what ROM hacking is built on. With some rare exceptions, hack creators don't make their hacks for money. They're just hardcore fans who want to share their love for the game with others. And as ROM hacking draws in new fans, that feeling of community only strengthens. Take the Simple Flips hacking competitions, which were designed to bring new hack creators into the scene. Take a look at the first sign in almost any one of these hacks, and you'll see a list of people who helped this person through the difficult process of hack creation. Whenever I read a sign like this, I can't help but smile. So, I'm just writing this to say that I love SM64 hacks, and if you have any interest in SM64 at all, you should check them out. If you're looking for some good YouTube content to show you what they're all about, I'd recommend checking out Simple Flip's ROM hacking competition videos. The hacks in those, and especially in the later comps, really demonstrate the wild creativity and ingenuity I was talking about earlier. If you want a better look into hack creation rather than consumption, Kaz's channel is probably your best bet. Or if you want to just jump in and try out some hacks, I have some recommendations. Star Road is an old school classic. It's pretty simple compared to a lot of more modern hacks, but what it lacks in custom code and unrestrained creativity, it makes up for with its rock-solid level design and general enjoyability. For any Zelda fans out there, Super Mario 64 Ocarina of Time is probably my favorite Kaza hack. It's incredibly creative, has a ton of custom code, and is a great example of a hack that switches up the formula and offers a unique gameplay experience. Anything Brodoot touches is almost always good, and I highly recommend his Star Revenge series. He's taken a little too much influence from the Kingdom Hearts school of naming things, but don't let that intimidate you. You can pretty much choose any one of these and have a good time. Just not Star Revenge 2 Act 2 Night of Doom. That one really sucks. And I keep bringing them up, but the Simple Flips hack comps, especially the later ones, have a bunch of mostly shorter but still incredibly unique and fun hacks. I'm a little biased here, but I think the Zelda competition was my personal favorite. Also, somewhat recently, Simple Flips, there he is again, revealed a new website, romhacking.com, that should make getting into SM64 hacks a little smoother. I tried it out, and it's one of the easiest ways to find and play hacks, along with having some neat meta features. From my testing, it seems like a good place to get started, and even without the star tracking software, it's a good database, so you might want to explore it a bit. I know that was a lot of information, but I'll have some links in the description to point you in the right direction if you're new. I'm hoping this video potentially helps someone else get into SM64 hacks, because they've entertained me for countless hours, and I'd love for the community to grow. This was kind of a long-winded outro, so to summarize, Super Mario 64 hacks are pretty darn neat if you ask me. Thanks for watching, and keep hacking, hackers.